Hello, passionate developers. Now, you would have heard loosely coupled design many times when you're learning software design or software development and so on. And you might have a fairly good idea about what it is. But have you seen how it's actually implemented in practice? Maybe you have seen, maybe you're not seen. And the thing is, you would have that understanding and the background knowledge of how it might look like. But today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how it is actually implemented in production for me. So, yesterday at work, I was given an urgent issue to fix. Like it was the change, the fix was because there was a change in a vendor system that we integrate with. And because the vendor system changed, we need to make some changes. And this change has to be done as soon as possible so that business does not get affected because now, typically, this kind of a scenario would mean that you need to run entire suite of regression tests, and if you do not have the entire suite of regression tests, you also have to get some quality engineers or software testers to test those scenarios. But guess what? Because we have loosely coupled architecture, that change was only one small mapping change, and which only required a small unit testing. It did not even require any integration testing because that change was that small. Now, how could that be? Well, that's where the loosely coupled architecture come into picture. Now I'll show you how that architecture look like and what is an alternative, like if it's not a loosely coupled architecture, how that will look like. And that way you can kind of clearly see the benefits of having that loosely coupled architecture. So let's dive in. So here's the architecture that we have. So we have this vendor application. It has got an internal database and which is exposed via this public API, and which is what we are calling this through this integration API. And we have the front end which calls this integration API that we built, and the integration API will get the public API. So that's the data flow. So any data that gets updated in database, it will be exposed via this public API. The integration API gets that information from the public API and it will serve it to the front end. So that's the overall design. Now the problem that happened yesterday was that this particular API made some changes, or some maybe there was some change in data which caused this to change, which shouldn't have happened, but yeah, it happens. You do not have any control over the vendor application. So this happened, and what we had to do is we had to get a fix in to make it compatible so that our front end does not break. So what I had to do was I pulled up the response that this API was giving, new response. I did a mapping change, but what I did not do was I did not change the contract between front end and the integration API. This front end and integration API contract was solid. We don't change it. The only thing that changed was this mapping. So we updated the mapping that is required. For example, there was a new field and it had to be mapped from a new place. We updated that mapping here. But this particular site, there was no change. We just reflected that contract remains same. And because of that, the front end does not need to do any kind of regression test. All the test that was required is just here some unit, just need to do some unit test, and then the whole system will work. So that's the benefit of having this loosely coupled architecture. This loosely coupled architecture does help you in ensuring your changes are isolated, and a change in one system does not affect the whole system. So if you look at this, the blast radius was only a small piece here in this integration API, and that's why that is a specific benefit that loosely coupled architecture comes in. Now, what I will do is I will also show you what the alternative looks like. So the alternative would have been, now there's a theoretical case. You have this front end which directly get details from this public API. Now imagine if that's happening. In that scenario, whenever the public API change, like yesterday, the front end has to change. And when the front end changes, you need to run the entire regression suite. Maybe you do have some logic to localize it, but still you need to put that smarts in that regression source to get this change properly tested. And the other important aspect is that if you have front end talking to public API, now this API would have some kind of an authentication in place. So the front end needs to have that authentication logic. And then this public API will have some errors that might happen. So you would want to retry whenever there's an error that happens. So the front end needs to have those retry logic. And then there are other certain error scenarios that front end might this particular API might be giving, there's some invalid scenarios. So front end needs to have that logic as well, saying that if this error happens, this is what we need to show to customer. That error happens, that this is what we have to show in the customer. So in essentially what happens is this front end system is become bulky. It is doing too many things. It is showing information to the customer. Then it has got the authentication logic. It has got the retry logic. It has got the error handling. So it has actually become now a very tightly coupled system. Any change that can happen, say maybe tomorrow they change the passwords or the secrets for this public API. Front end has to do that change and it will break. So this is where this is the example of tightly coupled system, and this is where having a loosely coupled system provides you the benefits of abstracting away all that thing like the retries, the authentication, everything. This integration API will handle it. Front end is unaware of it. Front end will not know whether there was a retry or not. Front end will not know what the authentication mechanism was. The entire thing has been abstracted away in this integration layer. And that is how the system becomes loosely coupled. And similarly, front end changes, there's no impact to this integration API, right? Because just ensures whatever the change has to happen, ensure that the contract between this front end and the integration API remains solid. There's no breakage in that particular contract. And that you really realize the benefits of loosely coupled architecture. Thank you for watching this particular informational video. Now, if you liked it, please do like and share so that other people can also benefit from this. Thank you. Bye.